Several aspects of the First Descendant are ripped clean out of contemporary shooters, the module systems from mod capacity to polarities for reducing the overall cost of matching mod, the mastery levels which are pretty much like mastery ranks but without the tests, right down to earning XP from them by leveling up Descendants without socket types and raising the proficiency level of weapons. Heck, even the researching system, where crafting means a waiting period but you can accelerate it with some sweet premium currency. It's not to say that all of this is poorly implemented or that iterating on existing systems and mechanics isn't viable. However, it all highlights how inferior the First Descendant is in many other areas. It feels like a looter shooter that took the essentials of its competition during the older days without accounting for any refinements or evolutionary leaps taken since. Leave those other games aside, and you have a third-person looter shooter with dreary mission design, an uninteresting story, relatively unexciting loot, lackluster characterization, excessive amounts of grinding, and, my least favorite, annoyingly implemented microtransactions. Let's start from the beginning. Or actually, let's not, since you've probably heard it all before. An alien race known as the Vulgus attacked humanity, wiping out much of it. Mysterious beings known as the Colossus, who are... well, they're doing things. Powerful individuals known as the Descendants, who fight back against the Vulgus. A mission to find 3 Iron Hearts, MacGuffins necessary to destroy the Dimensional Wall, with a big bad named Carol, who brings the Monitor from Anthem to mind, but with more facial expressions and internal factional conflict. A mysterious guide who awakens to assist the Descendants. Even if all this sounds interesting and new, don't worry, the story structure does its darndest to make it as milquetoast and boring as possible. You walk back and forth between different characters at Albion headquarters, who mostly serve as vendors and/or story receptacles. When out in the patrol space, known as the battlefield, you often have to complete 3 or 4 missions, little more than your routine activities, to access the main mission. Rinse and repeat. I can't even say the characterization is all that fresh. If it's not Alpha, Albion headquarters leader who's gruff and distrustful of the guide but still a softy deep down, then it's the starting Descendants, the dashing but arrogant Lepic, the strong yet silent Ajax, and the alluring and intelligent Viessa. The dialogue throughout the story does no one any favors, but the voice actors try their best to make it work. It's one of the reasons why characters like Bunny, Sharon, and Module Upgrade Guy can stand out, despite their two-dimensional character veneers. Bunny's dedicated mission is perhaps the exception to the rule for the storytelling. Focusing on her missing parents, this offers a better look at the character, who's always on the move and has to go fast, but seemingly as a way to block out her past trauma. The mission itself is little more than a fetch quest where you run around collecting records in existing locations to piece together what happened to them. It's still endearing and gives some hope that future Descendant stories can offer better glimpses into their personalities. At the very least, they need some varied gameplay and objectives. As noted earlier, the First Descendant gameplay loop can be broken down into 3 categories: submissions, main missions, and void intercepts. These submissions involve exploring a part of a larger region to complete various activities, each offering rewards with specific drop chances. The rarer, the less likely you are to get them. You defeat enemies to get bombs and attach them to 3 different points, or hack 3 terminals while fighting off waves of enemies. There's also defending a point to get an item that's deposited into a little bot for some real spice. Sometimes you'll just be tasked with annihilating enemies within an area. I did find the objective of running towards various smaller spheres and standing in their limited radius to deactivate them somewhat different. Unfortunately, the only unique mission type that doesn't involve wholesale slaughter involves performing and collecting little orbs, which felt off since the momentum of your jumps felt completely independent of the platform's movement. As for the side missions, recon missions require you to shut down surveillance towers, but they also quickly devolve into kill all enemies anyway. Void fragments are your typical horde mode like waves of enemies, except you need a Descendant with a specific element to activate them. Void fusion reactors involve fighting bosses, which is a change of pace, and then you have the encrypted vaults. The latter requires following some sound cues and then spending a code analyzer to activate a timed minigame. Fail, and the iffy timing on the button presses can make you fail, and the analyzer is lost. Better hope that you're not spending any of those rarer precision code analyzers. Once you've done all the requisite busy work, it's on to the story missions, essentially an instance dungeon where you slay enemies. Level design is somewhat more nuanced in this respect, though barely, even if the bosses aren't necessarily the most complex to overcome. However, some bosses are bafflingly designed, like Ederlich the Tracker, who has not one but two immunity mechanics which either constantly regenerate unless your team can overwhelm them with absurd DPS, or continuously crop up during the third phase. Ammo ran out at several points, necessitating a run around the arena to collect some more from fallen enemies. Upon progressing enough, void intercept battles become available, and you go toe-to-toe with the Colossus. These towering monstrosities allow for the grappling hook to come into play, as you damage a specific part and then hop on to punch them apart. It's a nice mechanic, but after breaking off the requisite parts, you need to rely on the good old-fashioned gunfire and abilities to get the job done. The various Colossus have some unique mechanics, thankfully, whether it's blocking the stunning beauty summoned eye to avoid damage, or trying to survive the pyromaniac's transformed state. I wish the arenas were a little more than gray, lifeless structures, but at least they have pretty particle effects on being destroyed. If there's one redeeming factor to the First Descendant, it's the gameplay. The grappling hook provides more mobility, and each Descendant's kit does offer something fun. Bunny can sprint at high speeds and build up an electric charge, which can be unleashed in a powerful blast. It also affects the damage of her electric aura, making it easier to slay weaker mobs. As straightforward as Lepic feels, it's still satisfying to group enemies with a grenade and blow them up using another. I would prefer it if his unique weapons didn't take so long to activate, but it's still cool. The gunplay isn't as satisfying as Destiny 2, however, it's still snappy and responsive, even when you're weaving through areas and slaying foes. Enemy variety could have used a bit more work, but they still stand out en route to their fate as fodder. I'm not a fan of shotguns and sniper rifles as heavy weapons, since it puts a damper on some of the build variety, especially with how sparse their ammo can be. Nevertheless, there's an abundance of loot to go around, even if some of it inevitably becomes junk. The endgame consists of everything that you've been doing up to this point. More challenging Colossus become available. Infiltration Operation repurposes the instance dungeons with modifiers for a chance at amorphous materials, and Special Operations offer missions where you slay waves of enemies and can choose to extract after a set number or keep going in the hopes of better rewards. For some bizarre reason, you can't matchmake on the hard difficulties of these modes. You also have plenty of ultimate weapons to chase, weapons to reroll, descendants to craft, etc. Despite how much of this content is repurposed, there is an extensive amount, and those who can get into the First Descendant's gameplay will be busy for a while. However, several drop rates are abysmally low, and the lack of matchmaking on harder content exacerbates the sheer amount of grinding required to pursue them. It's just a shame that the monetization has to exist in the state that it does. I'm not against the Battle Pass, which provides loot and materials, or even buying Descendants wholesale. However, the prices are a whole level of absurd. Sure, you can grind out everything for an ultimate Descendant, but there's still no excuse to price one at $50, never mind an item that can alter the socket types for modules. Of course, considering how long it would take for the former, the price tag looks more like a convenience fee than anything else. Despite my extensive criticism, the First Descendant isn't the worst looter-shooter experience. It's serviceable, presenting an alternative to Destiny 2, but reaching nowhere near their stratosphere in terms of innovation, storytelling, or mission design. It suffers from many of the same flaws as other live service looter shooters, but at least it's inherently clear and wanting to mimic the best. If the gameplay and the admittedly sharp-looking visuals look appealing enough, it may be worth trying before contemplating the inevitable return to greener pastures. Hey, did you know that we at GamingBolt upload new videos every day? Stick around, drop a like, subscribe, and hit that bell, and let us know what kind of content you'd like to see in the future with a comment below.